I'm going to take D because I asked D to call in on this subject, and we love D on this show anyway. But I challenged a little bit something I heard D say to another couple of hosts a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted to just bring that up. D, hello, how are you?
Hi, Richard. Nice to talk to you again.
How are you? You sounded a bit trepidatious. I'm not going to fight you. Don't worry.
I just wanted to say, John, I'm really glad to finally talk to you as well.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that you called in today. So, what question did you have?
So, I had a discussion with Sophia and objectively Dan 2 or 3 weeks ago. Richard let me know that he kind of wanted to have a further discussion on that. So, tell me what you want. Tell me what you want to know, Richard.
So I actually wanted to touch on two aspects of something you brought up in that call. Firstly, that you were a secular Buddhist, and Buddhism is my bag, baby. So I wanted to kind of go into that a little bit with you, but also, you know, you had this conversation with Sophia and Dan, and you were talking about people who were coming out of religion. And tell me if I'm misrepresenting you at any point here. This is how I understood it. And, you know, you were kind of saying we shouldn't kind of challenge them so hard because they're in a transitional phase. So they might have come out of an orthodox religion and be going through some kind of spiritual phase, still holding on to supernatural beliefs. And when they're in that stage, we shouldn't challenge people as hard. Am I on the right lines there?
Generally, yes.
Right. So this is kind of what my objection was to that, and you know, I'd love to hear your response to this. I don't know when I'm talking to somebody whether, you know, unless they specifically state I have come out of a religion and I now believe this. And even then, I do not know for certain that that is a transitional phase. Somebody could have left mainstream religion. Somebody might have always held on to this supernatural belief. And I think making the assumption that it's a transitional stage is quite dangerous thing to do. And to say then, well, I'm not going to challenge this person as hard as I would if they were within religion. I think that's doing a disservice to kind of educating and education using critical thinking and skepticism and things. You know, I want people to have a better toolbox, regardless of whether they're in a transitional phase or what their beliefs are. You know, even if they don't believe in a God, but they believe in some kind of vague spirit, ghosts, things like that. I think those people still should be challenged on those beliefs. And in fact, in my experience, and I can only talk from my own experience here, I found much more pushback from people who hold those kind of vague supernatural beliefs than I have from people who hold on to kind of orthodox religious beliefs. I found people with orthodox religious beliefs are much more open to talk about it, whereas people with kind of vague supernatural beliefs tend to really, really kind of not want to have the conversation. They're kind of really reluctant to have the conversation. And I don't know whether that is because, you know, the kind of in a headspace where they kind of maybe know that it's all bullshit, but they don't really want to acknowledge that. So I'm going to ask you, as a person who is, you know, self-identified being in that space, is it possible that the reason you think that we should not be as hard on people in this transitional stage or who hold these beliefs because you think within yourself that you might have to acknowledge that they are irrational?
You know what, Richard, you're absolutely right. I was speaking out of personal experience on several occasions. Having said that, I want to mention that I challenge myself almost daily, when I come up or whenever those thoughts or feelings come up, I challenge myself.
Yeah.
And number one, how important is it to me to believe it? And I shed a little bit every time I do that. I mainly wanted to talk about some of the things I've heard. I'm talking about people who aren't interested in educating so much as they are in having gotcha moments.
Yeah.
And I probably wasn't very clear about that. I don't think that's
I appreciate. Dee, I really appreciate the clarification. I really, really do, because it's very. I'm probably one of the most vocal people on this in this space that I know of, but I have as many arguments with atheists as I do with theists in these social media spaces, because I'm all about kind of giving people better frameworks to think by, better ways to assess what they believe. That's really what my bag is. And atheists are as guilty of needing that as many theists are in a lot of respects. And so I appreciate that clarification from you. I really, really do, because a lot of atheists are out there to give gotcha moments to people. So I completely understand where you're coming from on that. Having said that, I want to hear from John, because this isn't the Richard Gilliver show. It's the Talk Heathen, and we have two hosts on here. So I'm going to let John kind of take over for a while, give his opinion on the matter.
Yeah. So, I generally am perceived to be like a pretty strong personality. And I generally come out strong. I usually I don't try to give any quarter, I guess, to somebody in a conversation, but that really is depending on the topic that's being discussed, because if it's a conversation over like whether or not women should have bodily autonomy and they're basing their whole argument on God, I'm less likely to give somebody an easy time on that particular topic, as opposed to like a topic about Christian origins. Yeah. And so like it is very context sensitive for me as to when I'm more understanding and more accepting of people going through a transitional phase, either coming out of religion or whether they're still in religion and they're just questioning their beliefs. It really kind of depends. Like general conversation about God, I'm going to be a lot easier on people. But if we're talking about God in a moral aspect, or like why, or like, how you have to be a Christian or some kind of religious person in order to really be able to ground your morality, in reality, I feel like I'm less likely in those situations to be understanding of those things, because like my mind immediately goes to how immoral the Bible is and how that causes people on a number of different topics to just say horrible things, and they think that it's just normal, like it's because it's normalized to them, so they don't understand the depravity of what they're saying. And so I guess I feel like in the conversation, my goal is to really highlight the depravity of their statements. And if I have to be a little forceful or a little maybe bombastic or harsh, if you will, in that conversation in order to get them to understand the depravity of their statements, then I don't have a problem with doing that. I know on a call-in Heathen show recently. We were talking about sexual slavery in the Old Testament, how God commanded it and everything like that. And I phrased it in a very uncomfortable way because I was talking about how God commanded Israelite men to fuck children, because that's what it was. It was a grown-ass men that were, having sex with children. And so I phrased it in a very uncomfortable way for the caller. And so the caller was like, can we not talk about it in this kind of way? And so I just asked them, I was like, okay, in what way can we talk about fucking children that would placate your sensibilities? Because I feel like there's no way that we can talk about that particular subject and how that subject exists in the Bible in a way that's nice, in a way that makes them not feel icky about it, because it should make you feel icky. It should be a disgusting conversation to have. But the fact that somebody wants to make the conversation easier to have, I feel like it just shows how they don't actually want to talk about the harsh realities of the Bible. They just, they're used to the Bible giving them comfort and everything like that. And I totally agree. I totally understand that, not trying to take that away from anybody, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge these harsh realities that are portrayed in the Bible. And so I guess to bring this all back together, and so I can stop talking, is that, it depends on the context, and it depends on what topic is being discussed as to whether or not I'm harsh or if I'm more understanding. And so I think having a good gauge of that in the conversation you're having is key.
And I absolutely agree. I want to make it clear that my opinion was never that we shouldn't push back on the horrible shit that people say to defend their religion. That was never my position.
I think you've made that clear in previous calls as well, that you're quite happy to push back on horrendous things, and we appreciate that from you on this show.
Thank you. Well, thank you for allowing me to clarify and for giving me your thoughts. I really do agree with both of you, and I probably could have phrased it all a little better. But thank you. I appreciate that.
The more conversations we have, the better we get at having them. And, I'm aware that you're new to this space of having these conversations, and, you've always been a welcome caller. Before you go, I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you off the hook that easily. I want to talk to you a little bit about secular Buddhism and what it means to you, because I never get a chance to talk about Buddhism on this show. So I'm going to, gosh darn it, grab it with both hands while I do have the opportunity. What does secular Buddhism mean to you, and how do you view Buddhism on the whole? Do you think secular Buddhism is a good representation of Buddhism on the whole?
Well, I think it is, because Gautama never claimed to be a supernatural being. He was just someone who had some really insightful, epiphanies or whatever, about how
I just feel I need to interrupt you at this point. Have you ever read the Buddhist scriptures?
I've read some, not a lot.
Yeah. I can tell you, having a hard copy of the Tipitaka, which is the Buddhist equivalent of the Bible, if we want to simplify things to that extent, which is 11 times longer than the Christian Bible, roughly, give or take. There is plenty of supernatural stuff, both claimed by the Buddha and performed by the Buddha. He says that a monk who has achieved such a level of kind of insight, of power, of meditative prowess, can transport themselves through walls. He says that he himself claims to, have outstretched his arms and traveled to one of the Brahma heavens to talk to God. He claims to have the psychic powers of being able to read people's minds and see the future. You know, he has all these mystical powers, all these supernatural powers that many people who kind of come to Buddhism from the Western or secular perspective, and I'm certainly not criticizing that, by the way, because, you know, the secular perspective of looking at Buddhism is a legitimate way of looking at it. So I'm not saying that, you know, you are not a true Buddhist by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying is there is a wider perspective. And, you know, in religious studies, and I was talking about this before the show with the other guys, you know, when you've got a religion, whether you've got Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, what we say is that there are Buddhisms or Christianities, because you don't have the whole scope of a religion is so wide that you don't have a one size fits all kind of thing. And whereas secular Buddhism is perfectly legitimate to practice and not accept those supernatural beliefs, you know, I don't accept the supernatural beliefs of Buddhism, and I've been practicing Buddhist meditation for over 20 years. So I certainly get it. I certainly do get it. But that is not to say that Buddhism or Buddhisms are devoid of those beliefs. And certainly if you're coming from a scriptural point of view, whether that's the Theravada, which is the kind of oldest school of Buddhism we have, or the Mahayana, which is the other major school of Buddhism, and Vajrayana, which is sometimes classed as a separate school, but it's a subset of Mahayana, all of those traditions contain significant supernatural elements when you're looking at the scripture. And the scripture, you know, the Tipitaka, especially the section of it that deals with the Buddha's direct teachings and the teachings of his disciples, they contain lots and lots and lots of examples of the supernatural. So I would really, really encourage you to kind of go out and look at those scriptural references, to have a look at the wider perspective of Buddhism, and kind of just have a look and like educate yourself, I guess, a little bit more on the religion as a whole, because I think you'll find some of the stuff in there very, very interesting.
Mostly what I have been reading are the Dalai Lama's books. Right now I'm trying to work my way through some teaching he's written on the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah. So the Dalai Lama comes from the Mahayana school. Tibetan Buddhism is a subset of the Mahayana school. And, you know, just to give you an example, and, you know, it's a communicator. The Dalai Lama is a communicator for Buddhism to a largely Western audience. The West has been very good to him in Tibet's exile, you know, Tibetan Buddhism's exile from Tibet into India and other places. And, you know, he's, you know, from being very, very young, he has developed a good relationship with the West and communicating Buddhist ideas to the West. What he doesn't necessarily do very clearly is put forward these, you know, the more supernatural claims. I mean, in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, you have stupas, which they burn. I can't remember what plant it is, but it sends these fragrant, you know, plumes of smoke into the skies. And, you know, from the religion perspective, they are there to help people who have died and who are going to be reborn to kind of climb up into the heavens and achieve a good rebirth. And there's like, and, you know, the Dalai Lama talks himself about, you know, the Dalai Lama is supposed to be a reborn figure himself, a bodhisattva reborn from a figure called Avalokitesvara, or Kuan Yin, if you want the simpler name. That's another aspect of that figure he's supposed to have been born from.
Oh,
and
really?
and when a Tibetan monk is reborn, in fact, there's a film out from I think it's from the 90s, with starring Keanu Reeves. Now, I will warn you, because this is not.
I've seen
it's
that.
very unacceptable. This Keanu Reeves does do blackface in the film, so it's something to be aware of before watching it. But in that film actually talks about this reincarnation process that all the lamas go through, that all significantly high-ranked lamas go through, of demonstrating that they have been reborn, that they are the reincarnation of a particular figure. So when this current Dalai Lama dies, his successor will be chosen because they believe it is his. It's not a soul, because there is no soul in Buddhism, but the 5 khandhas, which are the things that are reborn in Buddhism, goes on into a new body, and when that body it comes to fruition and that child is born, they will put them to a test and give personal items of the current Dalai Lama to that child to see if he can pick out his items. And if he can do so, it will be called it will be announced as the reincarnation of the 14th current Dalai Lama and be announced the 15th Dalai Lama. So even though the Dalai Lama is a spokesperson for Buddhism, sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I saw that in a movie about the Dalai Lama, and I thought that was just Hollywood, but that's really what they do, huh?
That is the actual process that they go through of choosing, the next reincarnated Lama. But I'm going to leave you with that, because we have lots of callers, and I will talk forever and a day on Buddhism if I get a chance to do so, which will probably not be a monologue. So, hit us up again, Dee. Let us know how you get on. But I do appreciate the call. I always enjoy it when people call up and want to talk to me directly about either something I've said or something I'm challenging them on personally. So I really, really do appreciate that. And we'll see you again soon.